Coffee doesn't actually have an expiration date, but it can go stale. And it's not as simple and clear cut as just looking at the roast date on the bag and counting 2 or 3 weeks after that. Now, lighter roasted and dark roasted coffee age a little differently. Lighter roasted coffees are oftentimes recommended to start drinking them about 2 weeks after roast date, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 and 6 plus weeks off of roast date. Darker roast, on the other hand, can be enjoyed about a week after roast date. Now, the similarity between both of them is that they both hate oxygen. Oxygen is a killer to freshness when it comes to coffee and leads to stale coffee quickly. Stale coffee can oftentimes start tasting very dull, flat, and without very much interest in the flavor profile. The way to deal with the oxygen issue actually comes down to storage. How do you store your coffee from the moment that it's roasted to when you start drinking it? And that's what I'm out to figure out in this video, is what is the best way to store your coffee to maintain freshness so that your coffee tastes really, really nice when you go to drink your coffee. Let's go to the office and run a small little experiment. I took the same coffee, roasted on the same day. It's literally the same batch, but I stored it in 3 different storage methods. The first one is simply keeping it Ziploc sealed at the top in a bag of coffee. Now, I left this out on the table in the middle of the room to mimic your kitchen counter. What would the impacts of that be over a course of 4 weeks? Now, the second storage solution I looked at is this Fellow coffee canister. Now, when you spin or you turn the top, the canister will suck oxygen out of the container and release the oxygen, leaving only just the coffee. Now, the last storage solution is going to be a coffee bag that is heat sealed at the top, sealed with the Ziploc feature at the top, and completely untouched from the day that it was roasted. We're gonna do a blind tasting of these 3 storage solutions, compare them side by side and see if my palate can pick up the differences, which solution is best. Honestly, I have no idea what to expect, so I'm very curious how these are gonna end up tasting. We just passed 11 minutes on the cupping timer, so you guys know what time it is. It's time to start slurping. As time is going on and I'm sipping and tasting, I'm noticing more variety and nuance popping in between these bowls. This bowl on the far left is noticeably different than these 2 other bowls. It has like a very juicy texture to it. Nice flavor coming through, definitely an Ethiopian natural, lots of fruit coming through. This tastes juicier, lighter, silkier. It's a little more vibrant. Now, when it comes to these 2, both of these have a little bit more thicker bodied. They're rounder, not as juicy and vibrant as this one, but it's leaning a little more to being round, fuller, bigger. This bowl, I'm still getting a few hints of flavor coming through. It feels like has a little bit more complexity and clarity holding onto it than this bowl right here. If I were to choose which one I like most out of these 2, it'd probably be this middle one. 4 weeks after they've been roasted, this is what I'm hoping I can still get, is this clear, vibrant coffee still without having it degrade over time. So that being said, let's unveil these and see what's what. So this first one on the far left, this was the sealed bag, the one that had the heat seal on the top with the Ziploc function that was stored away in a cabinet. This is the Fellow canister, and this far right one is the no seal bag. I'm surprised at how different this coffee tasted. One thing I will say is that both of these options had much less coffee in them than this bag right here. This bag was kind of 50% full, while these just had about roughly 50 grams in them when they were being stored. I don't know if that makes a big difference with the canister, because the canister is sucking all the air out, so it's supposed to deal with all the oxidization that's happening and sucking out all the oxygen. That was an interesting little experiment, and here's my biggest takeaways for you. Number 1 is Once you buy a bag of coffee, keep it closed and shut and sealed. Don't open it until you're ready to drink through it. The worst thing that you can do is open up a bag, take a sniff, smell, close it, and then wait until you're ready to dive into it. And that also brings in the idea that it's better to have a few smaller bags than one big bag. If you have multiple smaller bags, you can crack into one and keep the others fresh and sealed in a bag. Bigger bags will lead to you opening up the bag, making yourself a cup of coffee, and then rolling it up or closing it. And you're going to do that every single day, and sometimes probably multiple times a day, which is gonna work against you because every time you open up the bag, it's gonna lead to more oxygen getting in there. On top of that, if you opened up a bag and you know you're going to be accessing it every single day, I would highly recommend is actually picking up a canister and pour your beans into this canister. You can actually use the mechanisms in these canisters to suck out all the oxygen every time you go to make yourself a coffee. It's probably going to be way easier and way more human error proof than, you know, zip locking the top of the bag and every time you open it, you're letting in more oxygen. So there are benefits to having a canister just like that. Thank you so much for watching. And as we always say, remember, reflect what's good.